Hi everyone, and welcome back to First the Coffee Crochet. In this tutorial we're going to go over how to make the corner to corner wattle stitch blanket. So this is a pattern that uses the wattle stitch and it is corner to corner. So this pattern is in US terms and the finished size is 44 inches wide by 44 inches long. It is a square blanket. It is highly recommended to use stitch markers, especially when doing the decreasing side of this blanket, because it can be hard to tell where exactly the chain 2 space is at the beginning of each row. Now this pattern is worked corner to corner, back and forth in rows, and then it has a 3-row border around it, and it's all worked in one piece. If you want to change the size of the blanket, you would just adjust the amount of times you do the repeat row of row number 4. So to make this blanket, you'll need 1,620 yards of a medium 4-weight yarn if you were wanting to make the size of the 44 inches by 44 inches. If you decide to adjust the amount of times you do row number 4, that is going to alter the amount of yardage that you need. When making this particular one, I did use the Red Heart Ombre yarn, and it was about 3.5 skeins. It was 951 grams, and it was in the color Deep Teal. You also need a 6mm crochet hook, a yarn needle to weaving ends, stitch markers, and a pair of scissors. When making the wattle stitch, it only consists of a single crochet, a chain, and a double crochet. When doing the decreasing side, you're also going to use the single crochet 2 together, and we will go over how to do these stitches as we go through the tutorial. As always, there is a written version of this pattern available on my website, and I'll leave a link for that down in the description below. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to start out, we're going to make our slip knot. And to start off for our foundation, we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So now for row 1, we're going to do a single crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. So that's this first chain down here. So to do a single crochet, we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, and pull up a loop. It'll give you 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. Now we're going to chain 1. And then we're going to do a double crochet stitch into the same stitch here. So we're going to yarn over, insert our hook, yarn over and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through 2, and then yarn over and pull through the remaining 2. And that's going to give us our first row here. Okay, so when we're doing the wattle stitch, most of your stitches are going to be in this chain 1 space here. That's between our single crochet and double crochet in our rows. So for row 2, we're going to chain 3 for the beginning of our row. Then we're going to turn our work, and we're going to skip the first stitch. And in this chain space here, we're going to do a single crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. There's our single crochet, chain 1, and then double crochet into that same chain space. Now we're going to skip this next single crochet here, and in this chain 3 space that we did at the beginning of our first row, so you can see that right there, we're going to do another cluster of the single crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Okay, so for row 3, we're going to chain 3 again at the start of the row, and then we're going to turn our work, and we're going to skip this first double crochet, and in this first chain space here, we're going to do a single crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet into that same chain space. Okay, so then we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, which is the single crochet and this double crochet here, and into this next chain space we're going to do again a single crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet. Then we're going to skip this next stitch here, which is the last single crochet, and in this chain 3 space here we're going to do a single crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. So each row is going to increase our cluster that we do by 1. So we have 3 little clusters here. So row 4, and this is going to be our repeat row that we're going to use until we finish increasing our blanket. So you'll repeat this row all the way up through row 77. And if you want to change the size of the blanket, you just adjust the amount of times that you do that row. So for the 44 inch by 44 inch, it took me 77 rows to get to that size. So for each of these rows, we're going to chain 3 at the start of the row and turn our work, skip that first stitch, and in that first chain 1 space, we're going to do a single crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. Then we'll skip the next 2 stitches, which is that single crochet and a double crochet. And in the next chain 1 space, we're going to do the same thing, a single crochet, a chain 1, and a double crochet. And we're just going to repeat this until we have 1 stitch left in the row and the chain 3 space at the end of the row. So skip 2 stitches, in the next chain 1 space, do the single crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. Now we're at the end of the row where we have the 1 stitch left and the chain 3 space here. So we skip that stitch, and then in the chain 3 space, do a single crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. So just repeat that all the way up through row 77. After you get to the end of row 77, or whichever row you choose to stop at when you get to the width of the blanket, for row 78, or your next row after you've reached your desired width, this is where we're going to start doing the decreasing, but row 78 is going to be just slightly different from our decreasing repeat row. So for this row, we're going to chain 2, and this is where it's a good idea to use stitch markers because it's hard to see this chain 2 when we're coming back around. So after you have your stitch marker around your chain 2, we're going to go ahead and turn our work. And we're going to skip this first stitch here. And in that first chain space, like we've done in previous rows, we're going to do the single crochet, the chain 1, and the double crochet. And we're just going to repeat that all the way down like we've done in previous rows. Every chain space that we have in our cluster, we're going to do the single crochet, the chain 1, and the double crochet. So after you've done 1 cluster here, skip the next 2 stitches, and in that next chain 1 space, do another cluster. So single crochet, chain 1, and double crochet. And when you get to the end of this row, instead of doing the cluster like we did in the chain 3 space of the previous row, what we'll do in that instead is we're going to skip this last stitch here, and in that chain 3 space we're going to do just 1 single crochet stitch. Okay, so now for the next row, row 79, and this will continue up through row 153. Or if you've done a different amount of rows, you're going to stop once you reach a row that has only 2 of the single crochet, chain 1 space, double crochet clusters in it. This is going to be our decreasing row. So for these rows, we're going to chain 2. And again, we're going to use our stitch marker so we can see that when we're coming back on the next row. Turn your work. Now we're going to skip the first 2 stitches here. So that's this one, which is that single crochet we did, and then the double crochet of that last cluster of the previous row. And in the chain 1 space of that last cluster, we're just going to do another cluster of the single crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And then we're going to skip the next 2 stitches, and again in the chain 1 space, single crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Just repeat that all the way across. Skip 2 stitches, single crochet, chain 1, double crochet in the next chain space. And we're going to continue this all the way across until you reach the end where you have the last chain 1 space here from the first cluster of the previous row and that chain 2 space. Okay, so now we're at the end. We have our last chain 1 space here and the last chain 2 space. So in these 2 chain spaces, what we're going to do is we're going to do a single crochet 2 together. So we're going to insert our hook into that first chain space, yarn over and pull up a loop. That'll give us 2 loops on our hook. Then we're going to insert our hook into that chain 2 space at the end of the row, and we're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and we'll have 3 loops on our hook. Then we're just going to yarn over and pull through all 3. And that's all we're going to do for the decreasing row. So you'll just repeat that row all the way up through row 153, or until you have 2 of these single crochet, chain 1 space, double crochet clusters left in the row. Okay, so at the end of row 153, or whichever row you're at if you decided to change the size of the blanket, your last row of this decrease repeat will have 2 of the clusters and 1 single crochet 2 together. So for row 154, we're going to chain 2. We're going to turn our work. We use our stitch marker just so we can see that chain 2 in our next row. We're going to skip the first 2 stitches here, and then in that chain 1 space, we're going to do a single crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Then over the next chain 1 space, in the chain 2 space at the end, we're going to do a single crochet 2 together. So in the last row, row 155, we're going to chain 2, turn our work, and then in the chain space of that 1 cluster and into the last chain 2 space of the row, we're just going to do a single crochet 2 together. And that'll be our last row of decreasing the size of the blanket. And now we'll go into doing the border. So for the border, we're just going to do single crochets for the first row of our border, just evenly down the sides. When we hit the corners, we're going to do 3 single crochet stitches into the corner. Now, since this is a corner to corner blanket, you're not going to have specific stitches to go into, so you're just going to have to kind of eyeball it and make it even spaced. If your fabric starts to bunch up like this, that means your single crochet stitches are too far apart. If you start to get a border that is looking wavy, while this is kind of stretched out, you have them too close together. It'll take a little bit of time, but you'll get used to it and you'll find the rhythm for where you want to place your stitches. So to start out, we'll chain 1, and then we're just going to start here at the beginning. And since we're at the corner, I'm going to go ahead and do 3 single crochets there. I'm going to put a stitch marker in the first one so I can see it easily as I'm coming back around. So what I like to do to make sure these are spaced right is I like to just lay my stitch down, see where my hook needs to go to put the next stitch. So laying it down there, and that looks good. So just do this all the way around. And when you come to the corner, do 3 single crochet stitches into the corner. Now, if you are having a hard time getting the spacing right, you can always change your hook size. You can go down a size, so that way you could put them a little closer together, and some people find that easier. Right, so we're at a corner here, and I'm going to do 3 single crochets. So just repeat this process all the way around. As we make it back around to our first stitch here, we are just going to use a slip stitch to join this last and first stitch together. Okay, and for rows 2 and 3 of our border, what we'll do for these rows is we're going to chain 1, we're going to turn our work, and we'll start in the first stitch, and we're just going to do half double crochets. When you get to a corner stitch, you'll do 3 half double crochet stitches. So to do a half double crochet, you just yarn over, insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on your hook. And just do that in each stitch all the way around. When you reach a corner stitch, do 3 half double crochets into that corner stitch. Alright, so once you come back around to the first stitch of rows 2 and 3 of your border, you're just going to use a slip stitch to join the first and last stitch together. So if you just completed row 2 of your border, just repeat row 2 again by chaining 1, turn your work, and then just start going back down the side with half double crochets. Once you're at the end of row 3 of your border, you can go ahead and fasten off and weave in your ends and enjoy your new blanket. Thanks for watching.